Hi, everyone. We're back with our Tribe series, and today we're talking to Far, who is one of the thought leaders in generative architecture and the founder behind the project Solids. Far is joining us from a little bit far away, directly from the Metaverse. Hi, Far.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Great to have you, and you're in a good mood. Could you tell us a little bit more about where you are?
I'm here in the Infinite Islands. This is a metaverse that I'm building myself out of the Infinity's AI and IRL. And I'm here with my Meatbit.
Love it. So for those of you that don't know, generative architecture has been around for actually several years. But most recently, the more people are entering the metaverse and the more we see different brands build around it, inevitable question comes up is, who is going to be the architect of the metaverse? And I'm sure many people have asked you this already. And do you think for people that don't know that much about generative architecture, you could share the broad definition of this?
Yeah, generative architecture, commonly also known as parametric architecture, has been around for quite some time. And as the definition says, is basically you use parameters to generate different outputs for the architecture. So it became very popular once computers started to get more and more involved into the process of creating architecture, and architects started to accept it, like the outputs generated by the computer as valid outputs for generating forms and spaces. But now that we are on chain with the blockchain, and after the rise of generative art, we can take advantage of all of these tools and start to apply to generate architecture, and then create like a unique pieces of design that can be used in the metaverse.
Amazing. What I find very interesting about this direction is that sort of like we talk about in real life, we talk about the metaverse, but essentially a lot of buildings that have been created now in the real world were like the inception is still from the software. So in a way, technology is having an influence of how our real life is being shaped. Is that something that you notice when working in this space?
So the reason I became very interested into digital tools and art and architecture is because what you exactly just say, that software is leaving the footprint in our built environment. Even like any object has been designed with a digital tool. Buildings have been designed with digital tools. So for quite some time, I was like very obsessed with that. So I was looking for toothbrushes and other products and guessing which software was being used to design them. This is why I kind of like got into this generative, or let's say, or study closely the digital phenomenon into design and art.
And these are beautiful. So we know that you launched Solids, and it was a collection of buildings that you could essentially place into virtual environments. Are these some of the ones that we're seeing right now on the screen?
Yeah, exactly. So these are Solids. The reason I came out with Solids is while I was working on this metaverse, on the Infinite Islands, I thought that I needed to have buildings to actually place my collection. Then I made a building, and then I was like, okay, maybe we need to do like a generative building, because if we think about like how the history is shaping NFTs with generative art, I think it was like the actual move to do generative architecture. So this is how Solids came out, because I really needed to have like a set of 1,000 or more buildings that I could use.
And so now it's a collection that anyone is able to purchase on the secondary market, and they come in different shapes, forms, and sizes. But what particularly interests me is that when I was reading about Solids, it mentions that there were several designers on the team, and so what we explore in Tribe series is the focus on co-creation and collaboration between different artists and creators. So I wanted to see if you could maybe share a bit more your experience working with others when creating these, both humans, but also machines.
Yeah, so I was collaborating with other designers, and usually when I work, I do like to have this collaborative environment. I was working for Solid with a group of two designers. They are architects. They work in real life in buildings, so they know how to do parametric architecture. But also I work with coders, Solid developers, etc., and also web developers to kind of like visualize the solids and game developers. So it's a very collaborative environment. And I think when you are designing collections that are supposed to be like a large or bring like a utility at large, it's not like a product of one person generally. So it's very collaborative.
That's a very good point, actually, because especially talking about utility, often the narrative we see on social channels is that artists try to dissociate their work from having any sense of utility because it's art, art doesn't need to have utility. How do you see the sort of like, where does generative architecture stand? Do you think it's all function, or do you see it's a blend of art and function that allows a bit of both?
So design by its definition could be, say, like it's art with utility. In this space that we're now creating or giving shape to the Web3 and the Metaverse, I think generative design is going to have like a great impact. So let's say this can be applied to buildings, but it can be applied to terraforming, cars, and you name it.
So everyone is wondering right now, with the big brands coming in, like Meta, how will the metaverse be shaped? And sort of, it sounds like you've had that experience of working in the traditional world and now in the virtual worlds. What do you think should be the focus? Because for especially the big brands coming in, on one hand, if they focus too much on the visual components, that can be outsourced to designers like yourself who can just populate the worlds with generative designs. So what do you think is a more important role of someone that has the influence and the budget to foster an ecosystem of creators making more of same generative architecture and other items?
Yeah, this is a good question. The notion of the metaverse is not directly, or the manifestation of the metaverse, it's not necessarily just a virtual wall. Although the metaverse, what it is just the manifestation of something that we call transmedia, which is the evolution of the storytelling. And then the way these stories manifest, this is how we understand for the metaverse. So what does it mean? It means like it depends on what we are trying to say or we're trying to communicate. Then we have the proper tools to actually manifest it. So it could be like a world, but also it could be something else. Like it could be, some type of experience. So this is why design is so important. So we can say Meta supposedly is making new worlds or the metaverse. This is what they are. We have seen a little bit of what they have been doing, but what I'm thinking also is that we might see other forms of metaverse that they are not restricted to creating worlds. And especially when you get like Zuckerberg is talking about like AR, VR, and other technologies. So I think it's gonna be a very interesting time for artists and designers, because artists and designers, they have the ability to visualize, right, or build these experiences. Again, right now, we are here in a world that is kind of like imitating an island in a real life, and a building that is imitating a building in real life. So with somewhat of gravity and all those forces, but who knows what's going to be next. So I think we should be very open, and the story will tell us. So the story will tell us what we need to do.
It's definitely very exciting to keep an eye on it. And I'm sure you provide sort of like education or advice or mentorship to some of the younger people coming into the space, less experienced. Can anyone, if they have a architectural training, just become an architect in the metaverse? Or what sort of advice would you typically give someone that's new to this?
This is an interesting question. So think about that. Right now, before a building is built in the real world, it's actually being built digitally in the computer. So that means that technically you can take that 3D model and put it in a virtual world. So we could say that is pre-designed in the metaverse already. I think architects can shift the way they work a little bit and really be very prolific in the space, but they need to just maybe like remove the constrictions of the real world and think about of this virtual world, like what they have, right?
It's almost, I think I once referred to the metaverse as a mindset. And I'm catching a very similar thought in this direction. I would love to ask you, in terms of the way you see things moving forward, could you like talk us through what do you think would be the next step? So I'm in terms of collectibles merging together within the same world. So for example, you are running around with Amiibit. So how do you think these communities would play together in a shared environment? Because naturally the different visual aesthetics sometimes doesn't correspond. So how do you think all these different elements would work together?
I think once we have like a completely interoperable metaverse and all assets can be transformed or like carry everywhere, well, what I think will happen is that narratives will play out, those worlds will emerge. And so I think now we have a lot of assets that they are coming out as NFTs. The next phase that we see is how these assets start to make sense and being interoperable in between them. Yeah, I think this is where we're going right now. It's just like a very tiny space, but I'm expecting this to grow. We will see like definitely more people coming into the space, but also more assets and more type of assets. And then this is where we will see how the metaverse looks, because right now it's an empty island so far, as you see here. So we're waiting for those assets. Actually, when I was in architecture school 10 years ago, I was playing with this idea of transforming paintings into landscapes. So you could actually like dive in. I didn't know back then that I was doing a metaverse, but I was actually, by transforming a painting into an immersive environment. 10 years after, this is what I'm doing again, but related to the blockchain. So in a way, it's more material, more tangible.
It's beautiful. Just on the final notes, maybe I would love to ask you, like, what are some of your projects that you're looking forward to, and what is the future plan for this space?
Well, first of all, there's a very interesting group of people, architects, designers, doing interesting projects, working a lot in, let's say, in the metaverse. And I think still there's not that many use, or not that many people are really like appreciating this yet. And kind of like it makes sense, because we are kind of like building it. For instance, like one of the projects that is more representative is the Meatbits, right? So right now I'm here having the Meatbit from the Meatbit DAO, and I have been working with them closely. And yet, like not that many people use the Meatbits, right? So they have been collecting, trading them, but not that many have been just getting a Meatbit and putting it in a 3D environment. So I think the same goes for solids, and the same goes for a lot of other projects. But I think they serve as a guidelines for more people to build on top, so learn from their mistakes and try to improve them. Where a lot of people will be using the metaverses, they will notice that or realize that these assets make sense, and they will be part of our lives. I think this is what I'm looking for, and I think this is kind of like a short term. And in the long term, who knows? The moment we have all the devices like a VR and better VR goggles, AR, like, who knows what is going to happen? I think these will merge. So we'll have like a lot of experiences happening here, and then we'll visit the metaverse very often. And we will be seeing this type of projects like solids and maybe it's etc. etc.
Very excited. I'm also excited about the opportunities for growth it would offer artists such as yourself and other creatives working in this direction. Far, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your thoughts and experience with us. I very much look forward to hearing what our viewers will have to say.
Thank you for having me. I'm I'm here jumping around the island, get it to know it better.
Yeah. Is there a way for someone to come and visit the island?
Not yet, not yet. We are doing some demos within the community. I guess down the road we will release a playable demo. So I think like down the road before the end of the year. But you can get solids and then put it somewhere else, another metaverse.
Amazing. So I'm waving off to you as you take the helicopter to fly away. I love this.
All right, so let's go for a ride and check it out, right? Check out this world. Go to another island.
See you.
See you.